is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine on this Wednesday. Nick Barris here. I've got a good show on tap for you this morning. It's something that the whole country's talking about, and there are several stories along those lines, but this one dealing with sports, dealing with the NBA, dealing with the Los Angeles Clippers and their owner, Donald Sterling. And this is where I'm going to want to get you, the viewers, to sound off and join in the conversation today. As you know, the recordings made of him saying some very, very racist things in reference to his players and African Americans, what he said, what happened yesterday. The hammer came down from the commissioner of NBA, banning him for life from the NBA and fining him money as well. Likely going to have to be forced to put the team up for sale. Anyway, lots of issues around this as well. I don't think it's just as cut and dried as everyone thinks. And I want to know from you whether or not you think that the ban was fair. Was it too severe? Did it not go far enough? We're going to get into all of that, but not just with me, with News Channel 5 Sports Steve Layman. Good morning to you, my friend.
Good morning, Nick.
This is his debut with me on MorningLine.
And about as early as I've woken up in a long, long time.
Listen, I really appreciate you coming in so early like this.
Absolutely.
I know
Thanks for having me.
Well, it is a big story. Get a sense. This is one of these stories, Steve, I think clearly that transcends just sports. It crosses over into news. It's both, don't you think?
And no question about it. Just the fact that we've had it in our newscast several times. The national news has had it very high in their rundowns the last few nights. It's one of those stories that it's about a professional sports franchise in this country, one of the owners, so one of the richest people in this country, and then it touches the always hot topic, the race card.
That's right.
And you throw all that together and it becomes a huge, huge story.
Well, and it's interesting too. It's the NBA. You're right. The race card involved. You look at all of the sports in America, and the one with the most African Americans, NBA. I was just seeing a report the other day of how few, in fact, it's a concern some for those in the African American community, African Americans are playing in baseball these days and at the major league level. But, the NBA, I think it's safe to say, is predominantly black.
Well, that's the ironic thing about this.
That's the irony here.
The NBA is by far probably the best at its minority relations in terms of its players. It's coaches. Overwhelmingly a black league, but it's not just a black league. It's a European league. It's a South American league in some regard. You've got more black coaches in the NBA than you have in any other spot. Right. You had the first black general manager in the NBA. You now have a couple different instances. I don't think any are predominant owners, but you have a couple instances
Michael Jordan?
Of black people owning. Michael Jordan is a guy in charge now at his place. Magic Johnson has been a part owner in the past. You have a new minority owner in Sacramento. Right. So this is a league that's frankly been very progressive when it comes to race relations, but this obviously was a huge black eye.
All right, what I want to do is play a story that we had from yesterday, late yesterday, that kind of had, the reaction from the NBA. Finally, the commissioner stepped forward and took steps before, by the way, the game last night, where the Clippers had to play Golden State.
Which, by the way, he had to do, because from everyone that I had talked to within the NBA, and there are bigger reports than just people that I'd talked to, but Clippers players were actually waiting with bated breath for what Adam Silver was going to do yesterday. And if he didn't come down as harshly as he did, or with what they deemed an appropriate punishments, they were seriously considering, Nick, walking out last night and boycotting that game, a playoff game.
Right.
And we have seen other teams, the Miami Heat came out before their games the last couple of nights. The Grizzlies did it last night in Oklahoma City. Very similar to what the Clippers did before Game 4 in Golden State, where they came out, they stripped off their warm-ups, and they wore their shooting shirts backwards as kind of a sign of solidarity or protest against the situation. So the threat of losing playoff games or having a player boycott, I think, was way more legitimate or real than anybody led on over the last couple of days.
He had to be thinking about that. And I know Golden State was going to be on board with the Clippers if they did that.
Yeah,
there may have been no game last night.
Mark Jackson was saying that he was hoping that no Clippers fans would show up out of protest. That might have been wishful thinking for him as a road coach.
No home court advantage, right? Yeah. As it turned out, of course, the Clippers did win last night, and it's a 3-2 series, but that's almost a side story to all this right now. Let's get you up to speed just on what happened yesterday. We'll give you more background, but then I want you to think about it, and there are some issues here. As repugnant as what Sterling said, the question is it fair what's happening to him? And we can explore that as well, but let's take a look at this piece from yesterday about the hammer coming down.
A sold-out crowd cheered on the LA Clippers hours after the NBA banned the team's owner, Donald Sterling, from the league for life. Clipper Chris Paul applauded the league after the team's win over the Golden State Warriors.
It's amazing the unity that our league has showed through this tough time.
Sterling was also fined $2.5 million after he admitted to the league it was his voice on the recordings arguing with his girlfriend.
Yeah, it bothers me a lot that you want to broadcast that you're associating with black people.
New NBA Commissioner Adam Silver is urging the league's Board of Governors to force Sterling to sell the team.
We stand together in condemning Mr. Sterling's views.
The Clippers posted "We Are One" on its website. The other NBA teams followed suit. But the fallout from Sterling's comments is evident inside the Staples Center. Workers blacked out signs of more than a dozen companies that pulled their sponsorships amid the controversy.
Fans and activists rallied outside LA's Staples Center in a show of unity and support for the NBA's decision and for Clippers players.
Hopefully they'll be able to get a new owner in here who will honor the Clippers the way they should be honored.
Clippers players say they'll continue to go for the win with or without Sterling as owner. Terry Okita for CBS News, Los Angeles.
Yeah, and the Clippers did win last night, right? They won that game. They
played really well, and it looked, just from a sports perspective, like the burden was taken off of their shoulders yesterday. Yeah. I thought in Game 4 in Golden State, they looked like a team that had other things on their mind, and you certainly can understand that. Last night, they looked like a team that was once again focused on basketball.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, the number is 737-7587. If you want to jump in, we'll take a break here and then get into it. I just want your take. But there are some other issues. Okay, one, clearly, I think Silver has the right to ban him and to fine him. He doesn't have the power to force him to sell the team, but I think that is something that will come from a vote of the other league, the league owners, right? They have to vote to maybe force him to do this, and it sounds like all the other owners in the league, and this is one of their own, are siding together to get rid of him.
I think Adam Silver had a mandate when he went out in front of the public yesterday, because I don't think he can be as stern and as authoritative as he was without it.
Yeah.
He said he didn't take a formal poll, but he talked to several owners. He talked to the Players Association. He talked to Sacramento City Mayor Kevin Johnson, who's basically the man who's running the Players Association at the moment. This was unanimous in terms of what people wanted. They wanted him out of the game.
But and I'll tell you this, though. I mean, it's the right thing because what he said was awful. But to me, Steve, this comes down simply to money. And this is what we'll get into in the next segments, and I want you guys to weigh in on it, is that this should not have come to a surprise to anyone. And it's my belief that the NBA and the commissioner's office over the past couple of decades were well aware of exactly how awful Donald Sterling is and racist. There have been federal lawsuits where he had to pay fines for trying to target Hispanics and blacks to move them out of properties that he owned. They looked the other way. Finally, because a court record is not provocative enough, this woman, records this, the tapes are released, and people react to it. All this time, he's been like this, and they've looked the other way. But now they have no choice because, as you heard, sponsors were pulling out. This was going to hurt the NBA franchise as a whole, and they wanted him out. It's money, but they looked the other way. They should have forced this guy out years ago.
Well, it wasn't just sponsors, it was the players. And this is the first time that players have ever been this outspoken about Donald Sterling and what his beliefs are.
Right, but
so that's a big part.
You're right, and that's a good point. But I've seen some comments from like Baron Davis, who used to play for the Clippers, and he talked about, there were issues I remember back then. And then was it Walt Frazier? Who was the, not Walt Frazier, who was the GM, the African-American GM? Elgin Baylor, I'm sorry, right. who sued him. And there were players, but it seemed like no one really listened. I mean, he's a billionaire owner, whatever.
A couple things. Adam Silver, one, is the commissioner who levied the punishment yesterday. That was his 88th day on the job as the commissioner. And so in some ways he's been painted unfairly with this, in that people are saying, well, why haven't you done anything? Well, he wasn't in charge
his
for several decades. It was David Stern, who was the guy in charge during that whole time. But a couple things that Adam Silver did say yesterday is, yes, there were rumors, there were lawsuits, but in all of these cases, when there was legal issues involved, the housing lawsuit was settled out of court, in which the Sterlings, both Donald and his wife Rochelle, didn't have to acknowledge wrongdoing. So it was settled and they paid money, but they didn't admit any wrongdoing. And then the Elgin Baylor lawsuit got thrown out. Baylor actually lost that case. And so the statement from the NBA essentially is, yes, there was kind of smoke in this regard, but never did we have definitive proof in a legal sense that he had done wrongdoing. And as a league, we don't want to step in when the courts have already acted in some way. So this was truly the first opportunity where they had proof, the public had proof, that Donald Sterling truly did something that looked bad on the league, and that's why they acted.
All right, you know what? Good explanation. I understand that, and you're right. The key here is hearing his voice on the tapes. Now, the other question is this right? Okay, I mean, clearly, make no mistake, what he said was awful, and I understand why the NBA had to take this step, but this was something he said in the privacy, of a conversation with this woman. He wasn't broadcasting it about, and the sad fact is, in this country, you are entitled to have repugnant views. You can be an awful person, if you want. You have a right to voice these things, and because he didn't, it went public, they're taking away an NBA team from him. So, what do you think of that? We'll take a break. When we come back, if you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to your calls. A lot more to talk about. 737-7587, because I think it's pretty clear that Mark Cuban of the Mavericks went on record saying, yeah, this could be a slippery slope. Let's be careful on this. Let's see. We'll take a break and be back with more right after this.